Today we're going to learn about the angles created from parallel lines and transversals. You should be on page 21 in your notes packet. The first type of angle that we're going to talk about are alternate interior angles. These are pairs of angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal, but are inside the two parallel lines. All alternate interior angles are congruent. Well, what this means is, if you look at this figure, we see that we have parallel lines here. So if I call this line L and I call this line M, I know that line L is parallel to line M, and that's what this symbol means, is parallel to. What you see is that these two lines that are parallel have a line that intersects both of them. Well, this line, if I call it line T, this would be my transversal. It is a line that cuts through the parallel lines. Because this line is cutting both of these at the same angle, and because these lines are parallel to each other, what happens is this creates a lot of congruent angles because it's cutting through at the same angle. Now, interior angles are pairs of angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal. So one would be on the left side of the transversal and one would be on the right side, but they are inside of the two parallel lines. So when I look at line L and line M, this would be considered inside. So any angle in here would be an interior angle. Now, to be alternate interior angles, they have to be on opposite sides. So what this means is that angle 3 is going to be an alternate interior angle with the angle that's on the opposite side of it, but not right next to it. And so it is congruent to angle 6. So the way that I would write this is that angle 3 is congruent to angle 6 because they are alternate interior angles. What would be another set of alternate interior angles? The other set of alternate angles here is angle 4 and angle 5. I know that angle 4 is going to be congruent, that's what this symbol means, to angle 5 because they are alternate interior angles. So they are alternate interior angles because they are inside the two parallel lines, so in between them, but they are on opposite sides of the transversal and up and down from each other. So angle 4 and angle 5 are congruent. Now, alternate exterior angles are angles that are on the opposite sides of the transversal, but they are outside of the parallel lines. So they are also congruent. Now, remember, if this was line L and line M, and if I said that line L is parallel to line M, and my transversal cuts this, well, these would be interior. So everything above and everything below my parallel lines, those are exterior angles. Well, alternate exterior angles are the ones that are on opposite sides. So angle 1 is an alternate exterior angle. If I look at the other side of the transversal, but outside, it is alternate exterior to angle 8. That means that those two are congruent. So I would say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 8 because they are alternate exterior angles. Now you find another set of alternate exterior angles. Angle 2 is going to be congruent to angle 7 because they are both exterior angles, but they are on opposite sides of this transversal. So they are alternate exterior angles, which means that they are congruent to each other. Corresponding angles are angles that are in what we call matching corners. And corresponding angles are angles that are also always going to be congruent. So what we mean by this is that every parallel line, so line L and line M, when they're cut by this transversal, each line has four different angles. So we see these four right here, and we see that line M creates these four angles. When we say that they are the ones with matching corners, what that means is they are in the same position. So if I look at these four angles for line L, angle 1 is in the top left corner. Well, on line M, the angle that is in the top left corner is angle 5. So that means that angle 1 is congruent. I want you to find another set of corresponding angles. Angle 2 corresponds to angle 6. So 2 and 6 correspond to each other. They are both in the top right corner of their line. So they are congruent to each other because they are corresponding. Angle 3 corresponds to angle 7, which means that they are also congruent. So this is because angle 3 is in the lower left corner here, and angle 7 is also in the lower left corner here. The last set of corresponding angles is angle 4 and angle 8. So angle 4 is right here in the lower right corner, and angle 8 is right here in this lower right corner. So that means that they are corresponding, which means that they are also congruent to each other. So let's look at what this means. I want you to answer the first two questions. The lines that are parallel here are M and N. We see that those two are parallel to each other. And line L is our transversal. Well, we want to name all of the angles that are congruent to angle 1. If I look at angle 1, I see that angle 1 is going to be congruent to angle 6. And I know that not because of things that I just learned, but because these are opposite or vertical angles. So angle 1 is going to be congruent to angle 6. Now I also know that angle 1 is an exterior angle. I know that because these are my two parallel lines, so everything in here is an interior angle. Well, everything outside of that is exterior. So angle 1 should have an alternate exterior angle with it. Well, the alternate exterior angle with angle 1 is going to be angle 8. And that's because 8 is also outside of the parallel lines, but it's on the opposite side of the transversal. So angle 8 is also congruent to angle 1. Now that's not the only thing, because if I know that angle 6 is congruent to angle 1, well, angle 6 is an interior angle. Since it is an interior angle, it has an alternate interior angle, which is going to be congruent to it. So the alternate interior angle for 6 is angle 3. I could have also said 3 because I know that angle 3 and angle 8 are vertical to each other, which would mean that they are congruent. So the angles that are congruent to angle 1 are 6, 3, and 8. Now I want you to find all of the angles that would be congruent to angle 2. The angles congruent to angle 2 are going to be angle 5, angle 7, and angle 4. Now we are also going to name 3 pairs of supplementary angles. There are all sorts of different angles that you can do here, but remember, if we're talking about supplementary, that means that they would add up to 180. So the easiest way to do this is to find 2 angles that are cut by a line. So if I look at 1 and 2, I see that those are on this straight line, which means that together they would equal 180. I want you to find 3 pairs of supplementary angles that you would think would work. So some examples would be 1 and 5. 1 and 2, and 3 and 4. You may also have found a lot of other examples, and those would also work. Now next, this asks what relationship exists among angle 1 and angle 8. Well, if I look, here's angle 1 and here's angle 8. I know that both of those are exterior angles, and I know that they are alternate exterior angles because they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So because they are alternate exterior angles, that means that they are congruent. And I would say they are congruent because they are alternate exterior angles. Now let's look at the relationship between angle 5 and angle 7. Angle 5 is right here, and angle 7 is right here. Well, I need to know the relationship between those. Now, angle 5 is an exterior angle, and angle 7 is an interior angle. So that's not really going to help me. So I'm going to need to figure out something else. Well, if I look at these, I can see that these 4 angles would have been created by line M, and these 4 angles would have been created by line N. Well, angle 5 is over here in the bottom left, and angle 7 is over here also in the bottom left. So because of that, they are in matching corners, and that means that these would be considered corresponding angles. Now let's look at the relationship between angle 2 and angle 7. Well, when I look at angle 2 and angle 7, I see that both of them are interior angles because they're in between the 2 parallel lines, and they are on opposite sides of the transversal. That means that these are alternate interior angles. Now let's put all of this to work. If we know the measure of angle 1 is 72 degrees, and I want to know what is the measure of angle 5, well, I need to know the relationship between 1 and 5. Well, they are not congruent to each other. They actually are supplementary to each other because we have this straight line M, and it's being cut into 2 different angles. So to figure out angle 5, I would do 180 minus 72, which would give me 108. So the measure of angle 5 would be 108 degrees. Number 7 says if the measure of angle 2 is 105 degrees, what is the measure of angle 7? So what would angle 7 equal? Well, when I look at 2 and 7, I know that they're both interior angles and they are both on opposite sides of the transversal. So that means that they are alternate interior angles. If they are alternate interior angles, that means that they are congruent to each other. So if angle 2 equals 105 degrees, then angle 7 also equals 105 degrees. Number 8 says if the measure of angle 4 is 102 degrees, what is the measure of angle 5? Well, when I look at 5 compared to 4, I see that both of them are exterior angles because they are outside of the parallel lines. And they are also on opposite sides of the transversal. Since they're on opposite sides of the transversal, that means that they are alternate exterior angles. Well, alternate exterior angles are always congruent. So this is also going to be equal to 102 degrees. Number 9 says if the measure of angle 8 is 76 degrees, what is the measure of angle 4? Well, when I look at 8 and 4, they are both exterior angles, but they're not on different sides. So what I see is because they are adjacent to each other, I know that they are supplementary. So I know that if I added them together, I would get 180. Well, if angle 8 is 76, then I would take 76 and subtract it from 180. And that would give me 104. So that means that the measure of angle 4 would be 104 degrees. Oh, I read that wrong. I'm sorry. This is asking for the measure of angle 6, not the measure of angle 4. So I apologize. Let's do that one again. If the measure of angle 8 is 76 degrees, it wants to know the measure of angle 6. Well, you would have to look at some of the relationships here. I know that 8 and 3 are vertical, so they would be congruent. And then I know that 3 compared to 6, these are alternate interior angles. Well, because those are alternate interior angles, that means that they are congruent. So this is equal to 76 also. So if 8 is 76, that means 3 is 76. And if 3 is 76, that means 6 is also 76. All right, the last one says if the measure of angle 6 is 74 degrees, so if we're looking at 6, 74 degrees, what is the measure of angle 4? So we're comparing 6 to 4. Well, 6 and 4 don't really go together because 6 is an interior angle and 4 is an exterior angle. So that doesn't help me much. But I do know that 6 is going to be congruent to 3 because they are interior angles and they are opposite. So they are alternate interior angles. So that means that angle 3 is 74 degrees. Well, if I look at the relationship between 3 and 4, I know that these two are on this line together, and so they are supplementary. So I can do 180 minus 74, and that's going to give me 106. So that means that the measure of angle 4 would be 106 degrees.